My name is Matt Baker here with another Flyover Fallout. As always, joined by Santiago Beltran. Today, we're going to be looking at the Nashville SC match that St. Louis City just played this weekend and an unfortunate 3-1 defeat. But we're also going to have a nice preview of the Real Salt Lake midweek match. So this should be a pretty hefty episode. Stick with us. Got a lot of information to pack into this, but we're going to have some fun doing it. Santi, how are you?
Doing great, Matt. Could be better, but obviously, tough, tough game for City last night. But it's part of the process. This was a game that a lot of people didn't give much about City getting a point or getting three. And Bradley Carnell has said it earlier in the week that they were gonna go free without much pressure. And obviously, you always want more, but just think about half point of the season, 29 points, first place. You have to look at the positives, and now at the next game is just in 4 days, so great opportunity to bounce back.
That's the thing, right? We are officially at the halfway point of the season. And halfway point of the season, first place in the West, tied for it and ahead on tiebreaker. It's still much more than you could have ever hoped for from the start. And there's a lot of that kind of mindset needing to keep into consideration expectations, the expansion aspect, and that we've just built an initial roster. We're going up against, especially in this match, the reigning and defending league MVP and Golden Boot winner, and has to be the leading MVP candidate this year as well. So let's dive into it and let's kick it all off with our starting 11 and some opening thoughts on the match, Santi. This one, yet another, I believe it's the 16th different starting lineup that we've run out. By necessity is this one where Roman Berkey was in net again. Kyle Hebert, Tim Parker, Lucas Bartlett, and Jake Nerwinski made up our back line. Miggy Perez and Indiana Vasilev. Actually, let's talk about the midfield as a four-man midfield. So it's not the two that you're used to. This was a 4-4-2 diamond. So beyond the back line, Miguel Perez, Indiana Vasilev, Tomas Ostrak, and Jared Stroud if you're doing counterclockwise. And then Nico Gioacchini and Rasmus Alm up front. So no Edu Leuven, couldn't go from the quad. No Jabulu Blom, couldn't go because he was in South Africa for his national team. Still no Klaus, still no Nielsen. What did you make of the personnel and the formation that we ran out?
I like it. I like it. I think it was appropriate for what we had previewed about Nashville, and about Nashville maybe sitting back and giving the ball to City. So I like it from the start with Perez part of the initial part of that diamond, and then Indiana Basilev as basically the number 10 close to Joaquini. So I liked it, and I like that the team kept the same backline that has been giving it results recently. So from the beginning, I thought it was a good lineup. Obviously, you have big absences. Finally, we were able to get confirmation on Edward Leuven not being on the game. But this team has that next man up mentality, and it held for a good 65, 70 minutes. But it's just when you have Hani Mukhtar on the other end, he can be dangerous anytime, and that showed in the second half.
And that's definitely the theme that we're going to see persist throughout this show is the impact that Hani Mukhtar had. But before we get into some of the stats and how the game played out, one thing that I think is important, at least for me to keep in mind throughout this as we talk, is we saw a notable difference in the first half versus the second half. We know that we were down both of our DPs, our main cleaner there at the number 6. We still don't have our one of our presumptive top center backs. There was a lot of conversation after this match about depth. And to me, there is a few spots where that's warranted. But in general, knowing how many stars and how many impact players were missing from this match, the depth of St. Louis City was tested and succeeding more so in the first half. When you look at the second half, you're seeing where a team that needs to be 3 deep at a position could shine, or you need to have more than 1 or 2 players at any given position in order to really fight back for the against the league MVP. What we saw in the second half, to me, that we'll touch on is that lack of third options when you're looking at a healthy squad. So you have Edu Leuven, Jabulu Blom, Indiana Vasilev, Miggy Perez, You're down after that point to Akil Watts, Max Schneider in your defensive midfield, and you needed Akil Watts on your right back role. So keeping in mind through all of this, I have caveats to a lot of the depth conversations that have been occurring, at least today, on social media. But before we get into all that, I want to recap real quick the stats coming into this to set the stage of where the teams were. Possession based, neither one of these teams really were used to having more than 50% possession. We saw that end up working out. St. Louis came into this match 45% possession, Nashville 47. Neither team had more than 13 shots averaging attempted. Nashville had slightly more passing. St. Louis had mid 300s for total passes. You're talking about teams that were consistently winning duels, having tackles, where St. Louis came in winning 13 tackles a game, Nashville 9, and St. Louis the more physical team. A lot of this ended up playing out exactly how we thought. And not just from a stats perspective, where it was about 50-50 possession, and you had St. Louis with 13 shots, Nashville with just under. You had Nashville with a little around 450 passes, St. Louis with just over 400. But you saw exactly what we talked about last week, Santi, the impact of Hani Mukhtar, not just in finishing, but in chance creation and what he can do on and off the ball to facilitate everything else. When we get to the goals here in a little bit, I think you'll start to see that impact. And it's exactly how we talked about it. And Bradley Carnell hit it after in his post-game comments that they knew what to expect and they were hit with it. And that's a key piece I want to touch on. But from how this game played out, Nashville to me maintained a pretty perfect diamond passing formation where Hani Mukhtar and Teal Bunbury were up front most of the time, finishing a lot of those chances, or at least creating chances in the higher portions of the field. And you had a lot of consistency in what they were trying to do, even if they weren't very successful in the first half. In St. Louis, where you were talking earlier, Santi, about Indiana Vasilev, I want to highlight Indy and Jared Stroud, who Bradley Carnell talked earlier about their ability to be in different parts of the field, their flexibility in both the attack and defending, and the way that they were utilized in the width of the midfield, almost as those diamond pieces. The width more or less was collapsed in and on itself in the midfield, and so you have a less wide city attack and a little less wide of the defense, but it clogged up the channels in the first half. I was really impressed, and I think that's a key piece is leveraging that diamond midfield and how it was able to be really stifling Nashville in the first half. And then it was the second half to me had a vastly different look. But what did you think overall, Santi, of anything, passing, formations, the way things started to play out?
Yeah. So first a correction. It wasn't Indiana Basilev on the 10. It was it was Thomas Ostrak. I was hoping for a big game from him, and he showed really good things on the first half. Obviously, had to come out early on the second half after Kyle Heaver's red card. But I like what the team did on the first half. Besides that early goal, which obviously it comes after that controversial PK that wasn't called, and then Nashville a couple of plays later scores. But the team kept its head up and continued pushing and created chances and maintain a good amount of pressure and option creation during the first half. And finally, it paid off at the end of the towards the end of the first half with that goal that was also reviewed by VAR. But I really like the first half, also the beginning of the second half. But Nashville, when you play against one of those teams that are at the top of their conference and have a player like Hani Mukhtar, you have to make a lot of adjustments. And if you are missing your DPs and some more key players, you can tell like as the game wears on and gets older, when you get to the final 20-30 minutes, those players like Hani Mukhtar can prevail. But I think the team fought and did what it could with the personnel it had. A few things could have gone their way, and we could be talking about a different story. But at the end of the day, Nashville took advantage of the opportunities they had, and Hani Mukhtar, obviously very effective when he has chances to score, and that reflected on the final score.
Yeah, so let's talk about those goals because you mentioned, especially the first half. And I think the way that the goals occurred to me highlighted almost a microcosm of the game itself. Starting off in the 11th minute, where Hani Mukhtar playing the ball deep into the right, in the right channel in their attacking third. He dropped it off to Sean Davis, who in a quick motion played it out right to Shaq Moore, who all three of them were pretty far along and pretty high. After Shaq Moore received the ball, Hani Mukhtar had more or less circled back into the box. And when Shaq Moore crossed the ball to Alex Mule, Hani Mukhtar was just sitting, waiting in the box to see what would happen after that ball was pretty high up, almost to the end line there. And it wasn't Alex Mule who caught the ball; it was a running Miggy Perez, who it wasn't hard to tell that his responsibility in there was Hani Mukhtar. And when Miggy Perez went for the ball instead of staying back to Hani Mukhtar, because you saw Tim Parker was in front of Alex Mule as well. Miggy Perez headed it back, but he didn't have momentum. He didn't have a lot of oomph behind his header. And so the ball didn't go very far. It went right to Hani Mukhtar, in fact, who was left unmarked, left open, and it was an easy shot. Miguel Perez, after that header, was more or less out of bounds and had yet to recover back, where he was, I think, seeing the ball, thought it was going a little further. But that was just the first time Hani Mukhtar created a chance and then played himself off the ball to get into the perfect spot to receive something and score it. So while yes, it was a gut punch right off the bat, it was also a sign of things to come.
Yeah, and that's where you see how valuable Hani Mukhtar is, because the play started with him, and he had like Parker, Bartlett, and Heber close to him, and then he played with Davis, but at that point he created a space, and then when Shaq Moore hit that cross, Hani Mukhtar was out there by himself. But that's a result of two, three players going after him and not being able to reposition themselves quickly after he makes that pass. So you can see how valuable he is. He can basically get two, three guys and create a space even for him on the next play or for his teammates. So you can see how good he is, and how he's able to create a space.
Yeah, and I'll save the other comments on Miguel Perez for after the third goal because there's some deep dives in him and some of the other players that I want to get into. But before that, the Nico Gioacchini goal. What a wild sequence. I mean, this ball, it had everything. It had a corner kick, it had a pass from Nashville, it had two different reviews in VAR, and an amazing cross by Rasmus Alm that I think gets overlooked in all of this. But the corner started from Indiana Vasilev. He passed it short to Rasmus Alm, who crossed it into the box, where at that point from his cross, St. Louis was onside. The ball ended up going off a falling Daniel Lovitz, falling into the box near the keeper, and Nico Gioacchini at that point, once it hit Lovitz, was then in an offside position. And the ball came and hit off of Nico Gioacchini. I'll just say it went off of his body and into net past Joe Willis. As Nico fell into it, that's where the second VAR came in. But the first look at this one, Santi, was looking at offside. And from the broadcast, that was a very quick look because all they needed to do was see that Lovitz was the one who touched it from Rasmus Alm's corner kick. It didn't touch a single St. Louis City player. And so at that point, the only consideration for offside would be from the point of Rasmus Alm's kick. And when he kicked it, when he crossed it, St. Louis was onside. So that was perfect. The next question, and the one that VAR spent the most time looking at, was Nico Gioacchini and where he touched the ball when it went into the net. And you can make an argument for the arm, but unlike the Daniel Lovitz, where he touched the ball, there was nothing clear and obvious about where the ball touched Nico. And because there was nothing clear and obvious, and the call on the field was offside, that was the clear and obvious that they were looking at. Nico touching the ball wasn't clear and obvious that it was his arm. And so the fact that he touched the ball going into the net was allowed to stand. Kind of a confirmation play stands as called type of a thing where Nico kind of hit, I guess his back is what they ended up going with, or back or shoulder. So it was a good opportunity for Nico, good positioning off of the corner and the cross, and just a good effort from St. Louis to crash the box.
Absolutely, very well executed set piece. Um, I was talking on the broadcast earlier that obviously without Leuven, you don't have basically your main player for corner kicks, free kicks. But that was a very good set piece by City on that corner kick. And kudos to Nico for continue following the ball and fighting towards the end, and where it hit his back, his shoulder. At the end of the day, it was reviewed by VAR and it was confirmed. And at that point, I thought the momentum changed, and City actually had a couple of looks before halftime. But I was for the second half, I was like, okay, City has this, and yeah, we know we're going against the odds that Nashville hasn't allowed two goals in a game only once, right? Only once,
Yep.
but not at home. But
Yep.
I was like going against the odds, and Nashville has been good at home, but things are looking good for City. But then halftime, both teams make substitutions and things changed.
Boy, did they ever. Second half starts and Jake Nerwinski leaves. Johnny Nelson comes on for him, but that was only half of the change. On the other side, Jacob Schaffelberg came in for Randall Leal and Ethan Zubak came in for Teal Bunbury. The Zubak for Bunbury wasn't as noteworthy to me. That was a tactical sub, obviously, but the biggest impact for Nashville is the introduction of Schaffelberg. Because when Schaffelberg came in, he slotted in on the left-hand side, left of Mukhtar, and that's kind of the biggest change for Nashville is they were introducing a very, very quick threat on the left attacking side. And unfortunately for St. Louis, their simultaneous tactical change was to send Kyle Hebert to the right back role, put Johnny Nelson in at left back, and let things go from there. But that was the only personnel change. The other change for St. Louis City that was very noticeable is more or less musical chairs in their attack and midfield. They changed their entire look in their attack and their midfield. They sent Miguel Perez to the left of the diamond. They brought Indiana Vasilev to the base of the diamond. Thomas Olkstrak stayed where he was at the 10, and Jared Stroud moved to the right. In the attack, Rasmus Alm moved to the left for a good amount of the time. And so there were some significant tactical changes. You have to figure that Carnell and Cruz saw something consistent in the first half, whether it's Mukhtar, whether it's Alex Mule or whoever it might have been that was threatening in different portions, and just how a Jared Stroud and how an Indiana Vasilev can impact things, and how Rasmus All might have found more success on the left hand side. So you knew there was intent because with that many changes, you knew something had to be intentional. Unfortunately, the things as they played out were really in Nashville's favor. And it started in the 54th minute with Kyle Hebert getting his first yellow card in a tackle on Schaffelberg. And then almost to a T after that, it was that times 10, where you have a moment in the leading up to the 70th minute where Hebert was already on a yellow. He had that rough challenge against Schaffelberg earlier. St. Louis was high pressing, and the ball fell to Alex Mule very quickly just before midfield from Nashville. He made an incredible pass down the right-hand side to a streaking Hani Mukhtar. And this pass was just picture perfect. Caught him in stride. Nelson and Indiana Vasilev, the left back and our defensive mid, they were high pressing. They were right next to Alex Mule. They were trying to steal the ball, trying to make the tackle. And because they were at that position before midfield, it was only Parker and Bartlett who were left back to defend Hani Mukhtar. So Mukhtar had beat Parker already in the past and in the transition. He had a 1v1 against Roman Berkey. But instead of shooting, he made the final pass to a Schaffelberg who was coming streaking alongside of him. And Kyle Hebert from behind fouled him in the box in transition. And the rest is history. Kyle Hebert picked up his second yellow and was sent off for a red. And Hani Mukhtar converted the penalty past Berkey, who, to his credit, guessed right, and it was just past his fingertips. To me, Santi, we would have been better served if Hani Mukhtar would have just shot the ball and scored, as opposed to what ended up happening with Kyle Hebert.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about that because if he had shot and scored, obviously those scoring plays are always reviewed. And one thing we were debating on the broadcast was if Hani Mukhtar was maybe offside, which I'm not sure if that's reviewed as part of the penalty kick review. I don't think it is. But at least from the angles I
Yeah,
saw, it looked like he may have been offside.
it was
Um,
close.
Yeah, it was close. And just thinking about the two plays, the one for the PK and the first yellow that Kyle Huber got, we talked during the preview of the game on Thursday about Nashville's ability with the long ball, and you could see that on both plays. The first yellow for here was a long ball from Davis to Shuffleberg, and he ended up beating Hibbert, and when Hibbert tried to get the ball, ended up getting that yellow card. And same thing on the second goal, a quick long ball from Mule, winning that second ball. Basilev and Nelson were around and kind of deflected it, but weren't able to get the second ball. And great pass, but Mule with that long ball to Hani Mukhtar. So we saw Nashville's strengths on play on those two plays.
And then after that, it was you're down to 10 men. You need to adjust the formations. You need to protect defensively because with your right back and one of your toughest defenders sent off, you need reinforcements. 72nd minute, Akil Watts comes in for Tomas Ostrak, and you see the defensive shape change where Akil Watts slides into more of that right back role, and you're losing an attacker at that point. But boy, you don't. That last goal really hurts to me, Santi. The way it played out, the fact that it wasn't really a heavy transition. I mean, it was transition from midfield, but it wasn't like we were caught off guard like their second goal attempt was, and where what we just talked about with the Mukhtar to Shackleberg pass. This was a loose ball that Hani Mukhtar recovered at midfield, and I feel like I've said it two or three times today alone. He ran a literal circle around Miguel Perez. He
Yep.
took the ball and just circled to his left to try and create space. Miggy Perez following him the entire time. Akil Watts, Indiana Vasilev were helping. So he had three guys on Hani Mukhtar, but he eventually dribbled himself out of it and then made a pass. After dribbling himself out of it, he moves the ball forward a significant amount and then makes a pass to Alex Mule, who again passes to Dax McCarty high. And while they're doing this, Hani Mukhtar is positioning himself, still running into the box, and you juxtapose it to Miguel Perez, who wasn't still running with him. And so by the time Mukhtar gets into the box, he finds the loose ball. It feels like a loose ball from Dax McCarty, and there's nobody again to stop Mukhtar. Miguel Perez didn't stay with him. Bartlett and Parker were focused on Mule and McCarty, and once again, Hani Mukhtar had almost a free shot on goal.
Yeah, but again, he created the space. He had basically his circle around three players, and he kept following the play. But at that point, there was a space, and also the pass from Dax McCarty, like without thinking, just pass it back very quick, and obviously left Hani Mukhtar just in front of goal. And he's very effective when he gets time and space, and that was the end of the game for City.
It was. And so, with that being the last kind of key moment, there were some chances after that. There were some more substitutions. We ended up bringing in Celio Pompeu, Aziel Jackson, and Isak Jensen, but the book was written on that one. And St. Louis falls 3-1. There were some positives to take away. Nico Gioacchini again scoring in his third consecutive match. He now leads the team with 7 goals in MLS play. But we would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the things that we need to talk about going forward from this. And it's not just the adjustments that Nashville made with Jacob Schaffelberg and the consistency that Hani Mukhtar provides and that high level. It's the adjustments in the second half and how they just did not work and the implications from them. Because Bradley Carnell talked briefly about those post game, and I don't know if you have anything to expand on this, Santi, but what I gathered is that the Jake Nerwinski sub was both tactical in nature, like we mentioned with the rest of the roster movements on the field, but also the Real Salt Lake midweek match played into a little bit. We talked last week on Flyover that if Edu Leuven can't go, it's Jake Nerwinski and Roman Berkey as the only players to start every MLS match. Jake Nerwinski is clearly viewed as a must start player right now based on how our roster is, based on his form and what he provides to the team. There's no other option at right back that the club really feels confident in starting. And this tells me he's going to start Wednesday, and he was subbed out to save his legs so that he could play. And the way that we changed formations, moving Kyle Hibbert, it also says there's an implicit trust to Bradley Carnell's how he views Kyle Hebert. And that implicit trust seemed like it didn't, I wouldn't say backfired, but it didn't have the effect on the right hand side because of the simultaneous sub of Schaffelberg and the impact Hani Mukhtar can have on other parts of the field. It didn't work out with Hebert over there, and it's unfortunate now that we don't have Hebert against RSL. The other thing to me, Santi, is Miguel Perez. There's a lot of conversation going on back and forth about, did this game expose him? Did it show that he needs more time with City 2? Does he belong at this level right now? And there were some individual mistakes in where his placement was on the field. There were some bad decisions in isolation, but in a game of moments where two of those moments in particular led to goals, he didn't have an otherwise noteworthy bad game to me. In fact, he was a part of that midfield that was stifling Nashville in the entire first half. So I don't think all of that can go unnoticed. I think a little bit of it is, so there is the portion to me of, he's 18, he's still learning. He's only played a 10, 12 MLS games at this point, whatever the number is. So there's still a lot of development occurring, and this game magnified that to the extreme against Hani Mukhtar. And Hani Mukhtar is going to make an average, even a good MLS midfielder and defender, look silly most of the time. And what he was able to do in space to play off of Miguel Perez is just as much of a testament to Mukhtar's finesse and capabilities as it is to Miguel Perez needing some more growth and development to be able to hang with that type of a player. Would there have been a massive change with Jabulu Blom and Edu Leuven? Possibly, yeah, but we don't know, and hopefully we get a chance to know. But I think it did highlight the opportunities for growth that Miguel Perez had.
Yeah, definitely. 100% agree. But to your point, first half, he was instrumental in getting Nashville shut down and keeping the game close. One thing I was thinking about when I saw he started, and we also talk about that during our broadcast, was that he has only played 90 minutes in Open Cup against Union Omaha, and I guess if you count the FC Dallas match, he also played 90 minutes. I
Yeah,
wouldn't count that
technically.
one, but one thing on the games he has started, he usually gets subbed around 55th, 60th minute, and this time he went longer, and that's one of the things we were talking about. Oh, he'll probably get subbed out for the second half, and it's part of his development. Maybe he's not like he's a good player, but needs to continue developing, and maybe not ready for 90 minutes. And maybe that's one of the things that this game showed. He still needs some development, and maybe as part of those adjustments that the team makes for the second half, maybe he needed to be subbed out. But overall, I think he had a good game. And yeah, people complain a lot that he's not ready for MLS. But and obviously it's hard to get into seeing the comments on social media, but some people are also right with what they say. They're like, well, yeah, he's 18, but he's playing, and if the coaches believe in him, is because they have seen something in him, and yeah, he needs more
Mhm.
development, but he's a good player and he has a bright future, and he will learn from these moments. And I think the team and the coaching staff will also get some takeaways and continue developing Miggy. But yeah, I wouldn't blame the whole thing on Miguel Perez. You cannot just blame one player, and the team will learn from this. I just look at the positives. Halfway through the season, you are 29 points. You are in a great position to make the playoffs, and it's part of the process. The team has to lose some games like this and learn from it, make adjustments, and hopefully for the second half of the season, Edo Lewin will be back. Hopefully, Klaus will be back at some point. But the team did what it could with the personnel it had, and it almost worked. Yeah, second half adjustments. You talk about not working out. The one thing for me is if it's not working, if the Schaffelberg substitution made an impact, maybe see if you can make another substitution around the 60th minute, 65th, to adjust, because definitely he was making the difference um, on the duels with Kai Heaver, and he won quite a few, and he also on some long passes he went behind Kyle Heaver's back. So that's where I would have made an adjustment, but it is what it is, and I think the team will learn from all of this.
Yeah, and that has me thinking because I saw a comment from Taylor Twellman on Justin Horniker tweet about Bradley Carnell's possible manager of the year candidacy type thing, and it was the adjustments haven't proven that he's at that point of a Pat Noonan and maybe even a Gary Smith. But what I see in this game that speaks to that is kind of a propensity for Bradley Carnell to make substitutions either at timed intervals in the second half or after big game changing moments occur. And so in this game in particular, let's look at when some of those subs happened really quickly because I want to move on to cover RSL here. But there was the halftime substitution that I think was planned, prescriptive for Jake Nerwinski. There was a substitution right after the Hani Mukhtar PK where Akil Watts came in, which was mandated. That was a big game changing moment where Kyle Hebert had the red card. The goal happened. We were down by one. You had to get a defender in. The next subs came three subs at the same time in the 80th minute, after 5 minutes after the Hani Mukhtar goal. And Nashville had just subbed out Sean Davis. And so you have, again, something game changing that had occurred, a second goal where you're trying to find an answer to it. Your point is very interesting to me in the sense of early in the second half, when you're seeing the impact that Schaffelberg has, you're seeing the way he's able to target Kyle Hebert, and especially after the yellow card, knowing how dangerous Hani Mukhtar can be in transition, it would be nice to see a little more proactiveness in when you're willing to substitute to try and fight back against that and see something that isn't working, but it hasn't hurt you yet, and really change that up, not give them a chance to get more run out in that and hope that they're able to find an answer. But I think that may be something that I'm interested in seeing in the second half of the season, especially.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like, yeah, what you mentioned about 12 man saying that maybe he's not there yet, but that's also part. Yeah, you are developing players, but Bradley Carnell is also developing as a coach, and
First year head coach.
he's learning from these moments, and I'm sure he will get better at making adjustments, maybe not not doing what you were saying with the intervals for the substitutions, but maybe adjusting more based on the way the game flows. But it's his first year, and yeah, you make some mistakes, you learn from those, and you get better at it. That's how, like, a coach like Gary Smith, it's up there, and he has done great things with Nashville. Um, you need time, and you need to make some mistakes and learn from those to continue developing as a coach.
Anything else you want to leave for Nashville?
No, let's talk about RSL.
Yeah, so let's look at where we go into this. So after the Nashville game, they still sit second in the East with 35 points. They've played 18 matches and they improved to 10-3-5. They're still only one loss and two draws at home. They continue their streak. St. Louis, halfway through the season, has now created quite the log jam at the top of the Western Conference. Through halfway through the season, St. Louis has 29 points, and they fall now to 9-6-2, 9 wins, 6 losses, 2 draws. 3-4-1 on the road. Still haven't won a road match since March 25th, but it doesn't matter right now because they return home to face a Real Salt Lake team that is in good form on the road to their own credit. But some personnel notes here for St. Louis going into it is that St. Louis will be without Kyle Hebert, like we said, due to his red card at Nashville. We are hopeful that Jabula Blom can be back after having gone to South Africa. Unfortunately, he didn't see any minutes. He didn't feature for them in their match against Morocco, hoping his travel wasn't as extensive enough to limit any action. I think those are like 14-hour flights going through Atlanta down to Johannesburg. His fitness is going to be the only question. Leuven is also going to be a question. How's the quad doing? How's that holding up in the past few days? Is he able to go? And Klaus likely out still. I don't think this is going to allow time for that to change at all with the quick turnaround. Obviously, Joachim Nilsson still out. So as we sit going into this, looking at Real Salt Lake is seventh in the West with 23 points through 18 matches. They've played one more match than City. They have a 6-7-5 record with 20 goals scored, a -8 goal differential. And here's the interesting thing: as opposed to normal MLS teams that are successful at home and struggle or middling on the road, Real Salt Lake is 4-3-2 on the road and 2-4-3 at home. This team has figured out how to win on the road, and their last three matches really highlight that. This past weekend, they had a 2-1 win at DC United. Before that, they had a home draw 0-0 against NYCFC. And then before that, a 2-1 win at Austin. All these matches were in June, and they also had a match in the US Open Cup where they defeated the LA Galaxy 3-2 on June 7th. So this team's had a lot of matches in June, but they've had a lot of success in June as well. What do you think of Real Salt Lake coming into this, Santi?
It's not the same Real Salt Lake City defeated back in April playing at Sandy, Utah. And people could look at the score, oh, City beat Real Salt Lake 4 to nothing, but you have to go back and look at the game. It was a game that on the first half, Real Salt Lake had a lot of chances. Roman Berkey had 8 saves in that game, one at the beginning of the first half that could have, not at the beginning, at the end of the first half, that could have
Mm-hmm.
changed the game. Luckily, City scored early in the half and then changed the game. But this is a team that is competitive, comes with a good streak of results, is undefeated on the road on their last 5 games.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be an easy game. And thinking about it, they are seventh in the conference with 23 points, just 6 points away from City with that logjam that you mentioned. Like everybody is so close in the Western Conference. So this could be one of those games that, yeah, it's the half point through the season, but this is one of those 6 points games because if City wins, it will take a gap of 9 points with RSL. But if RSL gets a result, they will get to 26 points, just three behind City.
RSL sitting in seventh place. They're in between Dallas, Houston, and Vancouver, Portland. These are teams that St. Louis City has had success in. So this caliber of team, where as it's shaken out so far, San Jose just above that, above Dallas. So we're seeing this spot, not just the fact that we've beaten them before, but this is an opportunity to put further distance, like you said, between the two teams. I think the style wise, Santi, looking at the style for Real Salt Lake and what we can expect, some of it's a refresher, but stylistically, they're very similar to Chicago Fire. They're above average in their directness of passing. They're below average in the number of passes per sequence. They like to control possession down their left attacking side, but they're quick to strike on their right. So they dominate possession down their left in the attacking end, but they're going to put a lot of struggle or a lot of pressure on our left back in transition. So this is where I see Johnny Nelson needing to really put his defensive mind on, defensive cap on, so to speak. And he's going to need to be really mindful of how high he's pressing and able to defend back in transition. Real Salt Lake's strengths, Santi, are shooting from direct free kicks, attacking down the wings, like I mentioned, and they create a lot of chances through some individual skill, though that may play into St. Louis's favor. We'll touch on that in a minute. And some of their weaknesses are finishing, avoiding offside. They like to try and time their runs well and defending against long shots, winning aerial duels, some of the things that they struggle with. And those in particular are some of the things that St. Louis is very adept in. It was one of the things that I wanted to see more of in this Nashville game, were taking longer opportunities, longer shots, something Eddie Leuven is very, very adept in. Indiana Vasilev and Jared Stroud also like to take their chances if they can find lanes. The aerial duels, we've talked so much about how the aerial duels are important to St. Louis, winning those battles, winning those 50-50s, trying to create possession to the point where you can immediately counter or push forward. Those are some things that St. Louis loves to do and that Real Salt Lake is weak in. So from Real Salt Lake, expect to see a lot of crosses, expect to see a lot of long shots, long ball opportunities. When they attack down their wings, especially on that right side, they're going to be very quick. They're going to take a lot of shots. So getting traffic in the lane from Lucas Bartlett, from Tim Parker, that's going to be very important. And we can expect to see some similar tactile subs in the second half. So Real Salt Lake uses a lot of their subs, just like St. Louis. I think the second half adjustments are going to be just as key here as they were to Nashville.
For sure. But yeah, just looking at their weaknesses, those play to City's strengths. But yeah, RSL has been doing well. Different point of the season when St. Louis beat them 4 to nothing. That was kind of the low point of the season for them. But they have been trending up, doing well in Open Cup, and they have some good individual players. Although you were alluding to it, some of them will be on national team duty, which may help City. Although just thinking about Nashville yesterday, Nashville had some players on national duty themselves,
Mhm.
and at the end they were able to have some good subs for those players. One thing that I don't know if you noticed, but obviously Walker Zimmerman was out for Nashville, and his backup was questionable for the game, ended up not playing. So
Mhm.
they basically had their third or fourth center back option playing, but it didn't really make a difference.
They're Lucas Bartlett equivalent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the difference with Real Salt Lake, though, because they are going to have some more players out, is the impact to the attack that their players that will be out have to their team. Real Salt Lake will be without Jefferson Savarino and Rubio Rubin for this match. The team has already announced that both will miss, just like they missed the DC United match, and it will be to finish their national team duties. So the key here is that Jefferson Savarino is their lone designated player, their number 10. He had 3 goals in April, has been kind of scoreless in league play, but had 3 goals in the last 6 all comps with the US Open Cup. He leads their team in assists with 4. So this is a very key component to their offense. A lot of their offense runs through him, not unlike I would say a João Klaus was and Nico Gioacchini. He's important into their offense. So missing him is a blow. But Rubio Rubin, also their number 14 forward, he has 2 goals and an assist, but he had been rounding into form really well lately with 2 goals against Austin, 2 assists in the US Open Cup against Galaxy recently. The way that he had been rounding into form, I feel this is just as big, if not a bigger loss than Savarino. The two of them together, obviously, it wasn't enough to prevent them from beating DC United. So the team can still find a way to win. And part of that goes to some of their other players Pablo Ruiz, Andres Gomez. Pablo Ruiz, go back and watch those highlights from DC United because if you like the Lucas Zelarayan goal from Columbus a week or so ago, you're going to like this one from the left hand side beyond midfield, another worldie. This guy has pinpoint accuracy. Pablo Ruiz, their number 7. He's a 24-year-old Argentinian midfielder, tied for first in the team in goals with 4, 3 goals in their last 5 league matches, including that howler. And Andres Gomez, number 11 midfielder, leads their team with 5 assists. These guys are just as capable, along with guys like Danny Muskovsky and Damir Krilic, who Musovsky has 3 goals, including one this weekend against DC United. Krilic has 2 goals. Those guys are going to be integral in replacing these guys.
Yeah, yeah, and I think RSL with Krylec and Musowski will basically have a good plan for Savarino's and Rubio Rubin's absences. They are still dangerous, even without Rubio Rubin and Jefferson Savarino, and they're coming in good form. They won yesterday without them, so it's gonna be one of those games that is gonna be close, and RSL is gonna come with a chip on their shoulder just because City got them 4-0 back in April. Speaking of Pablo Ruiz, I believe he was the player that had that back pass to
Yes, he was.
Klaus. So he's also gonna come with a chip on his shoulder. He will want to show that he's past that and he comes in good form. So this is not gonna be an easy game, but City has to go back to its winning ways and just get a win at City Park, continue making City Park a fortress, and be back to the winning ways and basically be ready for a quick turnaround against San Jose on Saturday.
And that match, don't forget, on from March 25th, where St. Louis beat Real Salt Lake in Sandy, Utah, 4-0. That was the last time St. Louis won on the road, and 2 of those goals scored were by Joao Klaus. So it's not just Real Salt Lake that is a vastly different team than who was in that match. It's St. Louis as well is a vastly different team that Salt Lake will see compared to the team that beat them 4-0. We have Nico Gioacchini, who's going to be taking a more starring role in this game. We hope to have Edu Leuven back. But in that match, we started Johnny Nelson out on the left. So that piece will be pretty consistent. Tomas Ostrak started that game. Jared Stroud started that game. Indiana Vasilev. A lot of the pieces are still there that they saw from earlier, but the way that our shape has been in these past few games, and especially against Nashville, pretty vastly different from what we ran out. It'll be interesting to see how much of the tapes from that game are impactful versus recent form against other teams. And in and of itself, you just have to hope that enough was learned from the Nashville game in how to handle a game without Edu Leuven. Because I talked to Brendan Weesey on the Big 550 KTRS Sunday morning about how this reminded me so much of those first few matches without Klaus, and how we had the personnel on our roster that could fill the roles, but what they were asked to do, especially with Nico Gioacchini after Klaus, he needed to find changes. He needed to change up what his approach was, to play higher, do different things instead of just trying to be a Klaus clone. And Miggy Perez is, to me, going to be relied on just as heavily, maybe less so the full 90, but he'll be relied on in this match as well. And he'll need to do that same kind of adjustment where you need to figure out how to play without Edu Leuven. He might find himself more as a sub role if Jabulu Blom is able to return. So that's another aspect to the Real Salt Lake side, is that they weren't facing Jabulu Blom in their first match. They haven't seen him. And we know the impact that he individually can have on this in stopping so much from the middle. I mentioned how Tim Parker and Lucas Bartlett need to clog up the middle from those in those lanes and the channels. Well, if Jabulu Blom is there with them, total game changer.
Yeah, for sure. This is the only player RSL hasn't seen. But I see it the other way. I don't think he will be ready for 90 minutes. So he will be a good second half substitute for Miggy Perez around the 60-minute mark. Maybe he will be fit and he will start, but I see it more as him coming on the second half. Just long travel, even if he
Mm-hmm.
didn't play, I don't think he will be fit for 90 minutes.
So let's go with lineups, Santi. Lineups and predictions of Real Salt Lake. You want me to go first?
Yes.
All right. So we know Kyle Hebert's out. We know that there are potential limitations with Jabulu Blom. I'm going to go ahead and guess that Edu Leuven misses this one as well. With the quick turnaround, I would rather see a healthy Leuven going into the back half of June into July in Leagues Cup. I think Klaus obviously still out. So I'm going to roll with Berkey and net, Johnny Nelson, Tim Parker, Lucas Bartlett, Jake Nerwinski on our back line. I'll say Tomas Ostrak, Rasmus Alm, Jared Stroud, and Jabulu Blom, Indiana Vasilev, and Nico Gioacchini in some way, shape, or form. I think it'll end up being 4-4-2. Wouldn't surprise me if we try to run out that diamond. But I do think Blom starts. I'll take the opposite approach. I don't think he goes the full 90, but I'm hopeful that we can leverage him for the majority of the game as opposed to a tactical sub. I wouldn't be surprised though either way if it was Blom or Perez. Those two guys they're not interchangeable, but you know what I mean as far as whichever one starts, the other's going to sub type of a situation. I don't think we take off Ostrak. I don't think Vasilev, Stroud, Alm, or Gioacchini are any big question to me. Maybe Salio for Ostrak. But I think Ostrak played a good enough game that that's my lineup.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna go with mine. It's similar, but I have a couple of things that are different. So yeah, Berkey, Nelson on the left side, Parker and Bartlett, Nerwinski. Then instead of Blom, I have Miggy Perez, and then I have Jared Stroud, Ostrak, and instead of Basilev, and instead of Rasmus Alm playing up front with Nico Gioacchini, I'm gonna go with Celio Pompeo.
I like it. I like it. That's a good call, I think, for what Salio can bring to the attack, and it still gives Vasilev, Stroud, and Ostrak that midfield freedom. Which, remember, it worked fairly well against Nashville. We were threatening in multiple times. We kept a good shape in that first half, and so if you're looking at a blueprint for what worked for St. Louis, Nashville's first half, if you're looking at what you need to adjust, it's the second half. And I think there's a lot of promise coming back to City Park. Real Salt Lake is playing on just as short of a rest as St. Louis, so both teams pretty, as far as fitness goes, are pretty in line with each other. I think it's just going to be a battle of those second half adjustments like it has been the past few games.
Yeah, but yeah, I think City is gonna be as strong at City Park, get back to its winning ways, and be confident going into another big game against San Jose next Saturday.
Yep. A lot of matches coming up quickly. Anything else on Real Salt Lake, Santi? Score prediction?
Score prediction. I'm gonna go with City 3, Real Salt Lake 1.
I'll go City 2, Real Salt Lake 1. So
All right.
let's hope we're right, at least from a winning perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Santi, last thing we have. It's something special, and I'm kind of excited about this. I teased it on Twitter last week or so. We're going to be doing a giveaway on Flyover Footy. First giveaway that I think I've ever been a part of, and I think that we've done on Flyover. So this one's kind of exciting. If anybody's been following me or various accounts in St. Louis soccer on social media, you know of those Nico Sports collectible St. Louis City soccer balls. They have a lot of information captured on the firsts, the 5-game win streak to start, City Park's opening, all of that stuff on the ball. It's a collectible.
There it is.
There it is right here on the stream if anybody's watching. What we're doing is we're giving one of these away, and we're leveraging and partnering with the St. Louligans and their Pride Raiser donation pledges to do it. So simple as can be. If you make a pledge to the St. Louligans Pride Raiser at stl.prideraiser.org for any amount that goes to help fund the St. Louis Metro Trans Umbrella Group and all of the great work that that organization does, let us know. Post it to one of our social media replies on Twitter. You don't have to say what you donated. You can just post a screenshot with your name. You don't have to show the dollar amount, or just let us know you do. We'll try to use Scout's honor on this. We'll gather everybody who's donated and told us that they've donated, and we'll do a random drawing on our first recording in July. We'll draw one random winner live on our stream and on our pod recording, and we'll get in touch and send you a ball. So that's it. We'll have more details on social media. I'll be touting this for the rest of the month. I think it's pretty exciting, and I'm excited to to help out, give back, to be able to offer this. Thanks to Nico Sports for helping us out with this, and it should be a good time.
Yeah, it's a great giveaway, a way to support the Pride Racer campaign and also get a good prize. And look at it, Matt is showing it here on the stream. So just donate to Pride Racer and you get a chance to win this really nice ball.
And that's all for us on Flyover Footy this week. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you sticking with us. It's a big time, exciting time for St. Louis. Halfway through the season, still in first place. A lot to be excited about. Santi, we'll be back later on this week to talk more, recapping RSL and looking ahead. So join us then, and thanks for sticking with us today.
Thank you. See you guys.